Commissioner Dozier will do the invocation. Commissioner Griggs will lead us in the pledge.
But dear Lord, thank you for the day you've given us, Father. Just each day that you give us, we know is a gift from you, Father. I just want to thank you so much for today. Lord, as we go forward to discuss our county's business, just ask for wisdom from you and just guidance, and just guide us in the direction that you would have us to go. And Father, for this season coming up, the Christmas season, just want to thank you, Lord, for your Son, Jesus Christ, Lord, who died on the cross for our sins. Just want to thank you for him and all that he does for us. And I pray for this meeting, just give us the wisdom we need, Lord, in Jesus' name, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay. Public forum. Do we have anybody that wants to speak? Anybody that signed up to speak? Okay, we'll move on to approval of the agenda. I do believe we have an add-on item.
Madam Chair, we do. I'll have a copy of the treasurer and resolution being proposed at your seat. The item is, or the subject is consideration to authorize the transit program administrator to authorize pay for transit system employees to recognize their service during the COVID-19 pandemic. We need to add this to the agenda, and I would suggest that this be at the end of transit action items.
Do we have a motion to approve the agenda, including this add-on item?
Motion so moved.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, we will go on to the consent agenda. There you are.
Yes, ma'am. The consent agenda consists of your meeting minutes from October and consideration to surplus transit vehicle 3, the 2012 El Dorado American PT.
Okay, we have a motion on the consent agenda.
Motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. There's no discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries. Okay, the planning action items.
You have three action items in planning. The first two are transportation improvement plan amendments. And I would suggest that you consider taking both of these in one roll call because they're both roll call votes. Mr. Paul will present both of them, and I will just turn it over to him so he can explain the two items.
Mayor, Beth, board members, the Department of Transportation is requesting you amend your Transportation Improvement Program, or TIP, to add the construction phases of the projects we provided. First one's located at Industrial Drive. This is just south of US 231, vicinity of the Panama City Mall. We'll be installing flashing lights, gates, power source for that location. The second project that we're requesting, a similar situation, is replace and upgrade the signals at Martin Luther King and State Road 70, and US 231. Both of these are construction phases programmed in the current year. And with that, I'll be glad to answer any questions you may have.
Anybody have any questions? Not, I would entertain a motion.
To approve?
Second.
Now, is that for both or just one?
For both.
Okay. Okay, we've got a motion and a second on both these items. You need a roll call vote.
Commissioner Carroll,
Yes.
Commissioner Dozier,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Griggs,
Yes.
Mayor Henderson,
Yes.
Commissioner Perino, Councilman Jarman,
Yes, ma'am.
Commissioner Street. That passes unanimously, both of those two items. So I'll just go ahead to enclosure C. This is, by the way, your committee's approved everything that has been presented and that will be presented. Enclosure C is consideration of resolution Bay 2136, approving entering into an interlocal agreement with the Emerald Coast Regional Council, or ECRC, the Florida Alabama TPO, the Okaloosa Walton TPO, Washington County, and Holmes County, designating ECRC as the designated regional transportation area to serve the regional needs of Escambia, Santa Rosa, Okaloosa, Walton, Bay, Washington, and Holmes counties, per section 339 Florida statutes. Our CEO, Mr. Austin Mount, will present this item.
Madam Chair and board members, this item before you, if it seems familiar, it is familiar because it came before this board approximately a year ago in an attempt to streamline some processes that exist. In the past, we've had what's called the Bay Gulf Homes Washington Partnership, and that entity was the mechanism for the county to submit trip applications to FDOT District 3. In order to streamline that process, identified that the ECRC, the Emerald Coast Regional Council, could serve as that entity or that funnel to provide those trip applications to District 3. Washington County and Holmes County have both vacated the Bay Gulf Homes Washington Partnership. Gulf County is going with the Appalachia Regional Planning Council. So the department has contacted Bay County with the message of if the county is interested in submitting trip applications, this interlocal needs to be in place, particularly because Bay Gulf Homes Washington Partnership is defunct. So this interlocal is being brought back forward to this board for your consideration and approval so that trip applications can be submitted.
Anybody have any questions for Mr. Mount?
In the September 27th meeting, this one you're referring to, there was a question concerning trip and whether or not we would be getting consideration as we have with the regional. And the regional, I think Bill Dozier was the chairman. Since I've been on that regional, we had two projects approved, both of them, one in Bay County, one in Gulf County. Our relationship with Gulf County has been very strong. And one respect, I hate to lose Gulf County. Is the Appalachian be as equally good to Gulf County as we are?
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, they work with them on a same basis that we work with our counties because they are part of their council, their regional planning council, and they provide other services. I know they've conducted freight studies for Gulf County, so they'll be in really good hands with the ARPC.
And with TRIP, we're still dealing, I think that Brian would agree, we're still dealing with the same pot of money. And
Yes, sir.
we had to make, so,
Yeah.
as it was in September, I'm in favor of Emerald Coast.
Thank you. Yeah, just to add some additional information there, the process has always been the Bay Gulf Homes Washington Partnership would receive those applications and assign a priority ranking to them. But in reality, those applications were competing with other parts of the district. So any project that Escambia all the way to Leon County and beyond would then compete again at the district level. And so a prioritization from the Bay Gulf Homes Washington Partnership, you might walk out the door feeling good and fuzzy of having a number one or two project, but when it comes down to looking at the rest of the district through the District 3's evaluation criteria, those rankings will change. And so I do have to say, I've heard many times that Bay County and the communities that have submitted TRIP applications have done a tremendous job in years past because you have great projects, you have great applications. And so as long as that continues, I mean, you guys could still conceivably keep continuing to see TRIP funds come through. And we also don't see some of the other counties submit applications for whatever reason. So there might be a handful here and there, but oftentimes Bay's always front and center on the whole process. So while I'd like to say you won't see a change, I'd like to say that because D3's evaluation criteria is still going to stay the same. So even though the format's changing, the funnel's changing, on the backside, nothing's changing.
Austin, does this help us in competing for any kind of additional dollars statewide?
Potentially, yes. From what we've already seen, because we've established this, because through the other TPOs in the rural counties, we've established the ECRC as the regional transportation area. We've already seen a grant come from District 3, like $200,000 grant to do some studies in that area and to create a regional transportation plan. We anticipate that that's going to open the door for more funds to come in for transportation. We've seen it happen already. We anticipate more to come. Thanks.
Anyone else? No further questions. I'd entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. No further discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
So we have our FDOT update next with Mr. Bryant Fault.
Mary Beth. Department has one public meeting upcoming we would like to make the board aware of. This is the design public meeting for the Panama City Beach Parkway Lane project. This corridor will be improved from Mandy Lane to Hathaway Bridge. We'll be having a hybrid public meeting to discuss the design elements on Thursday, January 27th from 5:30 to 6:30. Your online option will be at our Northwest Florida Roads website. The in-person option will be held at the Lindale Conference Center in Panama City Beach. We're anticipating the final design being complete in the fall of next year, 2022. As we presented at last TPO meeting, the right-of-way acquisition for this corridor has been fully funded, and we're hoping to get construction dollars on these three segments as we move into the future years of our work program. That concludes the update for the DOT. If you've got any questions on that or any other item, I'll be glad to address it.
Anybody have questions?
Concerning the Titus 231 Star Avenue, appreciate just the access to the plans.
Okay.
For that safety, and it looks good. Just time frame is always going to be the issue.
Yes, sir. Yeah. Secretary Gaynor's aware of that, and he's challenged our folks to see what we can do to advance that project.
So thank you, and thank Gaynor for.
I'd just like to say thanks for all the hard work. I know I've spoken to a lot of people that have been working real hard on that Back Beach Road project. So
Yes, sir.
that's going to be a huge project.
That's one of the different priorities.
Okay, anybody else have anything? Okay, thank you. Okay, we go on to the planning presentation items.
We have one presentation for the planning presentation items. This is implementation of targets for safety performance measures. Mr. Gary Kramer will present virtually.
Thank you, Madam Chairman, TPO members. Closure D is the setting of targets for safety performance measures. Performance measures were an emerging issue by the Federal Highway Administration during development of the 2040 Long Range Transportation Plan. Rulemaking for safety Bridge and pavement and system performance were established by the Federal Highway Administration between 2016 and 2017. Bridge, pavement and system performance targets were adopted by the TPO on September 26, 2018. Do not need to be adopted again until April 1st of 2023. Targets for safety performance measures must be adopted annually by February 27th for the 5 categories listed on page 2 of enclosure D. The TPO can either accept FDOT targets or establish their own targets for safety. The last 4 years, the TPO accepted the FDOT targets, which is Vision Zero, for the 5 safety categories. If the TPO wishes to accept different targets than the state targets for safety, please let me know by December 10th. And I will coordinate with FDOT on the data for Bay County for the 5 categories based on the 5-year rolling average from 2016 to 2020. However, going with different targets than FDOT targets would also require more detailed analysis as explained on page 1 of enclosure D. This item is for review this month and approval in February. If you have any questions, I'll attempt to answer them. Thank you.
Any questions? I don't see any, so thank you, Mr.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Okay, your next section on the agenda is the planning information package. And in the package, you have your minutes from your advisory committee meetings, last time they met in October, the actions report from the October meeting, and some amendment letters for TIP amendment. And this takes us to the transit portion of the agenda. Under transit action items, the first is enclosure F, and this is consideration of resolution Bay 2135, approving a 1-year extension to the existing transit advertising contract with Fuel Media Holdings beginning January 1, 2022 and ending December 31st, 2022. And Mr. Lamar Hobbs will present.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is essentially a 1-year extension to our existing contract that we had you approve in January of this past year. Essentially, we have 2 1-year options. This is the second 1-year option. So this will be the final one. After this, we'll end up having to put this out for bid again. But essentially, we're asking that you allow us to continue contracting with Fuel Media for this remainder of this 1 year. And so far, the program has been very successful. We've been able to generate a little, right at $200,000 in revenue for the transit system. As a result of this advertising, it's cost us absolutely nothing other than some space on the sides of our buses. So with that, I would ask that you consider approval of the item to continue our contract with Fuel Media for 1 additional year.
If I can say, I think they've done a great job. I know when this program first came up, I don't think we knew what to anticipate, and we thought, well, maybe we get $20,000 a year or something. I don't think we ever anticipated $200,000. So they've done great to generate that much revenue for us. I'm real pleased.
Thank you. They've been a great company to work with so far, and easy to deal with. So we've enjoyed the relationship.
Wonderful. Anybody else have any question, comment?
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. If there's no discussion, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion carries.
The second transit action item is the add-on, and it is consideration to authorize the transit program administrator to allow authorized pay for transit system employees to recognize their service during the COVID-19 pandemic. And Mr. Hobbs will present this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. This is, you'll recall that in, I believe it's June or July of 2020, we brought this to you. The board reviewed this, and at that time made the decision that this was not something they wanted to move forward with. Since that time, we have received a lot more clarification now on what we can utilize ARP funds for, and have learned that actually the government's intent is for those funds is largely to be used to pay those frontline employees or those employees that have been involved in providing welfare for our community, things such as transportation, those types of things. As a result, basically during the pandemic time. So we also, during the original presentation, what was suggested or offered up at that time was that the recommendation would be $175 per pay period pay. So there was a continuing or recurring cost to the TPO. With this, what we're asking for is that we're asking you to approve a one-time only payment of $1,500 for full-time employees and a one-time payment of $750 for part-time employees. We have, I believe it's 35 full-time employees and we have 7 part-time employees. And when I say employees, we're talking about the transit employees that actually work for First Transit, that operate the day-to-day operations of the transit system. The total cost of this will be $62,167.88. We have, in keeping with some of the federal requirements, it has to be after the March 1st, 2020 date of when the pandemic was first, I guess, acknowledged, for lack of a better word. And we've run it through June 30th of 2021. Because we wanted it to mainly be for those employees, or primarily be for those employees that actually worked during the pandemic, and not, say, an employee that's just been with us for the last 90 days or in the process of going through a probationary period. We've also, along with the money for the employees, we would ask that you also consider to allow us to add an additional $4,417.88 to that overall cost, so that we can reimburse First Transit for the employer's portion of the Medicare and Social Security tax that they would obviously be obligated to pay, because this will be done through payroll. We obviously are not going to be able to do that for the employees. They will be responsible for that through their own, based on their own choices, what they made in terms of their tax situation. We have the TPO has so far received $966,299 in ARP funds that can be utilized for this. We also have a significant amount of money in reserve and carry forward that we could use for it as well. That would, of course, be up to the board should you decide to do that. So we would just ask that you consider allowing us to make this one-time payment for these staff, these transit workers that have worked tremendously hard during this pandemic. We actually have had one of our employees, one of our transit drivers, die as a result of COVID. He was very instrumental in working during the hurricane. His name was Doug Sheffer, and unfortunately, he won't be able to take part in this because he's since passed away from COVID, but was a great worker. And we've had several that have had to fight the fight of COVID. So this is an opportunity for us to give them a little help here at Christmas time, and do it with money that's, for lack of a better word, meant to help those essential and frontline workers.
Anybody have any questions for Lamar?
Did transit receive any COVID money from state or federal that would be applied to this?
The ARP funds is what we heard. Here's our holdup on ARP funds. The ARP funds is it's currently in process for us. It's actually a little bit further than that now. Just in the last couple of days, it's actually went into what they call review. And so we expect probably by next week that we'll have our approval. The concern is that we won't have it to give it to them before the Christmas holidays. And so that's kind of what we've kind of left it open-ended as to whether or not we use ARP funds or whether we use unrestricted funds. But yes, sir. And we also have received CARES Act funds as well, which we can't use for this purpose.
So next question would be, would it be possible if we did use unrestricted funds, could that ARC funding could be used to replace that unrestricted? I don't, usually that's not the case, but
Sure, this, I mean, we obviously could have, we have other things that we could use that ARC funding for if we didn't use it for this purpose. You know, obviously, we want you to know that if you decide you want to use unrestricted funds, and those funds are funds that come from the sale of buses that are no longer used, surplus buses. We sell scrap. We have sold a ton of scrap around here, metal. We sold anything that if we think it has some sort of value, we send it to auction and sell. And, you know, we've got, for instance, we've got $134,000 in auction proceeds that is available. We've got $185,210 in advertising fees that have not been obligated to anything. So, you know, we have the money in reserves to be able to do that, should you choose to. But obviously, that would be a decision the board would need to make.
What, you done? What other things can this ARC fund be used for? What other things can we spend it on?
Anything related to the pandemic or COVID. So you could use it for personal protective equipment. You can use it for any kind of operating expenses that you have as it's associated with providing a service and for this pandemic. Some of the things that we are using are not just ARC money, but COVID money for is all of our drivers' uniforms are laundered. We've had to put on extra personal protective masks on the buses for people to have. Sanitization stations so they can, you know, like you see over there on the counter. So when they get on the bus, they can get sanitizer in their hands. We've gone kind of doubled up on our cleaning and that type of thing. So those are some of the things that you could use the funding for.
This came to us once before, didn't it? Came to us in the form of basically what we're asking for is hazardous duty pay or hazardous pay here. And last time it didn't pass when it came before. And I just, my concern with it is, you know, when we go down the road of starting to pay the hazardous duty pay, so many people fall into that category. The staff of the trolley system does a phenomenal job. They do great. I mean, they're the drivers and the rest of the staff, they do fine. And there are so many people that would fall into that category as well for hazardous duty pay. But I know the last time I voted against this was for that fact of you know, we're all pretty much in this together.
Yes, sir.
And that the bus drivers are doing a great job, but I don't see where they would, in my opinion, the hazardous duty pay. I can't go down that road with this to support this.
Is it specifically because of the wording, calling it hazard duty pay, or is it just supporting an increase in general?
No, you know, there's been other organizations that I've been with that have, you know, at this time of year, we've been able to give out Christmas bonuses and stuff such as that. This is tied to the hazardous duty. And I just don't see where their hazardous duty is more hazard than most any other job that's going on. And so that's why I can't support this as it's worded.
So if I can respond to that, just a couple of things. One of the main reasons we use that wording hazardous pay, or sometimes people use the word premium pay, is so that we could utilize the ARC funding should we decide to do that. Because they are very specific when they discuss that matter of fact, they call it premium pay or hazardous pay. And we actually had our disaster consultants, CDRW or CDR McGuire, actually generate a kind of an executive summary, if you will, justifying based on what the federal government and state government has said, also what the Department of Treasury has said in terms of who would qualify for this and not qualify. But transportation is one of the agencies that they actually specifically call out as being qualified to receive these types of funds. Should the board decide they want to call it something else besides hazard of pay, we can certainly do that. We would just have to take that money from reserves versus taking it out of ARC funding. So, you know, I guess my stance on this thing is I'm always about using other people's money. If I can use grant money before I tap into mine, then I'm excited about that. But but that is, you know, I understand your concern.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
And this came up last time we discussed the 35 full-time and the 7 part-time. Is that the total number of employees that they have staffed?
Yes, sir. That is transit related employees. That is specifically.
Those are the people that qualify for the time.
Yes, sir.
Employed during the time frame.
Right. So that includes bus operators, maintenance technicians and parks clerks, dispatchers, schedulers, reservationists, your management and support staff, and then what we would call forward-facing staff providing services to or in support of residents or other essential staff.
It's not just all drivers. They're not all high hazard. Some of them are.
Yes, sir. We've got several dispatchers that dispatch these drivers that take the calls from the citizens that need services. We have schedulers that have to schedule people to get to and from doctor's appointments or dialysis. We have, you know, obviously you got your support staff that takes care of making sure everybody gets paid. And then we have our supervisory staff that oversees the day-to-day operations of the transit system.
And the timeline, March 1, 2020 through June 30, they could have worked anytime in between there, but still currently employed, or
Have to be active and currently employed, yes, sir.
they had to start, they had to be on at March, or could they have started?
No, sir, as long as they started after March 1st, 2020. And the reason we did that is so that we could utilize this ARC funding, because that was when the pandemic, I guess, was acknowledged. I don't know if you want to call that was the declaration of emergency at that time or what have you, but and the reason we stopped it at that June 30th deadline was so that we didn't want somebody coming in here that's only been here for 90 days or that's still on probation to get this money, because they certainly have not been doing the same thing that these other employees have been since March. Does that make sense? I'm hoping I'm making sense.
So they would have had to be employed that whole duration.
Not the whole duration, but they have to be off probation and they have to currently be employed now. So let's just say you were employed starting June 1 of 2021 and you're still employed now, you would be eligible.
How many total employees do they have? Is this the whole staff?
This is the first Bay County, the staff obligated to provide service for Bay County for our contract that we have. They have.
Are they all in Bay County?
Yes, sir.
We currently have 54 staff, 35 qualify for the date.
It says 40 plus than that.
Well,
42, it's 7 part-timers. There's 35 full-time employees and 7 part-time staff.
But you have more than 35 full-time.
yes.
But they obviously don't meet that criteria, so we couldn't.
I'm not totally opposed to it, but as worded, I'd want it to come from Mark.
Okay.
And if that's past Christmas, that's past Christmas. Now, if you wanted to use unrestricted, then you probably would need to change it. If you felt that you needed a retention bonus for those types of employees, then that's probably the route that you should take. But that's my position.
And I understand, Lamar, that you're wanting to get this out before Christmas.
That's the intent, yeah.
So, and you're not sure whether ARPA funds could even be used by Christmas as of today.
Well, not necessarily, because we haven't received our final. Now, I will tell you that typically how it operates is that the county is the fund, Bay County Board of County Commissioners, funds conduit for the TPO. So essentially what happens is the county will front that money typically, and then they draw that money back down from the grant once that grant becomes available. We're in a pretty good position in that we have so much in our reserves and carry forward. The county doesn't have to extend very much credit to us, if you will. But so that's typically how that works, if that makes sense.
But it's still uncertain whether or not you could use specifically ARPA funds.
There's no question about whether you can actually use it for this
In
purpose,
time.
but whether you would be able to do it within the time frame.
So perhaps for simplification, like what if it was just anyone that's not been here, that's been here outside the 90-day probationary period, and it was a set amount, and maybe there's an amount that everybody's comfortable with, and it is a Christmas bonus. I don't know that there's anything that says it has to be hazard pay, and that seems to be the thing of contention the most. But I don't know. I don't know what everyone's thoughts are on that. If it was just maybe it's a smaller amount. Just whatever I guess the board would be comfortable with.
And for clarity, where we came up with this $1,500 and $750 amounts that's kind of consistent with what we've seen other transit agencies. At the time, I think a representation was made that there was only one transit agency in the whole state that was doing this. Now there's several. Now that we have more clarity on what ARP funds can be used, several agencies have chose to do this. Some of them have chose to make it performance bonuses. Some of them have chose to make it hazardous pay, premium pay, some of them's called it. But that's kind of consistent. We've seen it range anywhere from $1,500 up to $5,000 per employee, based on whatever criteria they have set forward.
Another question. So we're looking at 1,500 per 35 full-time employees. Now, what if you have a full-time employee that came in, kind of going back to what you said, that came in September? Are they getting the full 1,500?
No, sir, they wouldn't be applicable.
So it's prorated type stuff.
They wouldn't get it at all because.
But that's after your March date, though, right?
Well, it's after my June date, June 30th, 2021. So.
Right. If they came in September of 2020.
Yes, sir.
They would get the full 1,500.
Yes, sir. As long as you were employed after that date.
Yeah. Okay. I just wasn't sure if your 1,500 was based off of pay period or something like that.
No, sure. It was, what we were trying to do was keep it in line with the whole pandemic issue. And when the pandemic was kind of at its greatest, and this is kind of what we came up with.
I think that I'm more in line with, if we have ARP funds and that's what they're geared for, and that's the whole intention of it, I would rather see that. The unrestricted, we may have something come up, we really need those funds, and we're not going to use these funds. And you said earlier that you thought it would be approved as early as next week. So it sounds like you're headed in the right direction if that were okay. Again, I just think that if that's what those funds are for, I'd rather see those than if we approve this at all than other than unallocated.
And then also, and I think this would fall under the purview, really, it would be great to see this go through the subcommittee first. Simply because a lot of this can get worked out before it even gets there. I don't know, maybe I'm wrong for thinking that, but.
Well, I will take, if we put it to the subcommittee, we would have to generate a time for them to get together and meet. And I don't necessarily think we would be able to do that. Mary Beth, you probably could.
I'm not talking specifically to this, but if things of this nature, instead of, because how much sausage do we want to make here on this versus if, 3 months ago, it was brought before the subcommittee, that sausage could be made and ironed out.
Oh, I
See what I'm saying?
Sure. Yeah. Again, the reason we've utilized the language COVID-19 pandemic hazard pay simply so that we can utilize ARP funds, because there's a couple of issues that I have to face. One, I have to face federal government, but then I also have to face Miranda Griffin over at our budget office. And Miranda will nitpick this to death and say, it's not verbatim exactly. And then there's a whole nother thing called the clerk's office that some of you might have had dealings with. But so they're, and they're there to make sure we don't get ourselves in trouble. So I can appreciate it, but it's sometimes it's a difficult process negotiating all of that. So
Have a question, and this is kind of and I kind of agree with Commissioner or the councilman's statement down there that there's a lot of things to work out, but to simplify it, I mean, this is a much larger amount when we're talking $1,500 an employee, but I think the intent of what you're trying to communicate is you want to give something by Christmas. Is that?
Yes, sir. That's correct.
So is there an amount that would be comfortable, much smaller than this, that would be a little something, $100, $200, whatever that is, that could come out of unrestricted, and then let everything else work its way out underneath the subcommittee?
I mean, certainly you could do that. I think, I guess, I don't know, I guess what we're providing you here and what we're putting out is pretty much what the federal grant guidelines say we can do. I don't know, in terms of working it out, I don't know how much more we.
I'm talking about unrestricted. So I'm trying to take this off and give you something you could give to.
I understand.
But if we want to follow through with exactly the way that it is worded, try to work it out. Whenever the ARP funds come in, it could be next week, it could be next Christmas. And that's when it happens. And we leave it as is. I supported that as well. So I was just trying to give you more ultimately what your intent and what you're asking. If somebody by Christmas, it seems like to me the only guaranteed thing to do is using unrestricted funds. But if we wait and we're comfortable with whatever timeline it comes out to be,
I mean,
grant dollars are available. So.
I mean, certainly if the board doesn't mind doing that, that would certainly be great. My feeling is the money will probably be available hopefully before the holiday. And if it's not, then the money is still going to be there for those folks. And, my intent is to try and help them a little at Christmas, but, overall, the goal is to give them some sort of financial support for what they've done. And, whether they get that in December now or whether they get it in January, I would have a strong feeling they'd be just appreciative either way. So
that answers my question.
How many total employees do you have? 50?
we have total overall, or?
Yeah, overall.
54?
54?
Again, we're only talking about the ones that met that criteria.
Right. We're trying to get around that though, so.
This money,
My position on it is that I mean, every one of these people are good, quality, hardworking people. We've got people in positions that, if I vote for this, how many people out there that do the same thing that qualify for hazardous duty are going to be told, no, we'll give hazardous duty over here, but y'all don't get it over here.
Well, I think that's going to be up to the organization that could get the ARPA funds to make the decision. Do they want to spend their funds that way?
Well, that's true, but in general, that's the way I see it, because I see it as whether it's ARP funds or whatever, if I'm talking hazardous duty for somebody, I know people out there that could come and talk to me that are truly in hazardous duty. And no, you don't get it. So that's my position. I can't support something for one group of people. And I understand the funding and the ARP funding and this organization, but this opens the door for so much more. And that's the only reason that I don't support it. I'm not saying that they don't deserve some type of a little bonus or something, but I'm just saying that the way it is here.
I understand your concern.
Mr. Hobbs, do you currently have any Christmas bonus program or anything in transit?
We don't have any, not in our procurement policies. We do not. No, sir.
Then I think that for me, let's make the sausage if we want. Doing probably unrestricted funds, doing a Christmas bonus, and $300 an employee. Now, if anyone wants to change on any of that, then let's talk. But if if enough of us feel like we want to get something in place for Christmas, and then we can deal with ARC funding later, whenever that's in the bag, then that would be something, because I know Panama City Beach at this time does a bonus program, the county does a bonus program. We're not going out of line in introducing this for this year into transit. So I'll take any opinion on that idea.
Pre-pandemic, have you ever done a bonus? No, sir. And that's just not a, so now you're setting policy. The next.
I understand.
We're now setting up Christmas bonuses.
This money will all be coming out of the 966,000.
Yes, sir. What this, not all of it, we'll take all of it, but the money that is obligated for this would come out of that 900,000, yes, sir.
But not for Christmas or retention bonus.
I'm sure that would have, if we decided to do that, that would have to come out of reserves.
Let's do an inflation bonus.
You're talking about if you're doing something for Christmas, you're talking about 54 employees, right?
No, sir. No, sir. It's only going to be the employees the 42 employees that met that criteria.
Yeah, well, not if it's a Christmas.
Talking about a Christmas.
Bonus.
If it's a Christmas bonus, it's got to be everyone.
Oh, okay. Yeah, that would be, yes, sir. That would be up to you guys to.
And then, I mean, would it be even somebody that just started a month ago? Are they going to get the same bonus as
They
people
have to be out of program.
for 5 years?
Well, there's another caveat to this thing, and that is that the drivers are represented by a union. And so that would have to be negotiated with the union there. This particular situation that we're in right here has already been discussed with the union, and there has been an agreement made should this come, and there's an amount I'm talking about.
So to do a Christmas bonus, there could be issues.
I would think this would determine what whoever's making the motion would, the way he would put it. Whoever makes the motion, if he includes it, it's included. If it's not included, it's not included. Union doesn't have anything to do with that. It's whoever's making the motion, how they word it. If they want to make the motion one way or the other, is how it's going to go.
I guess you could take it or leave it.
Yes, sir. I understand.
Is each employee getting an individual check, or does it go to First Transit and then they?
The way it has been, what we've been advised is because First Transit is the employer, what we would need to do is cut a check to the employer, and then they would cut individual checks to the individual employees. That's has been what's been recommended to us. Because if we do it, we have to 1099 every employee.
So I read through this resolution, it's thankful, grateful, recognize, and all that. I don't see hazardous in here, but we know what we can surmise this is all relates to.
Yes, sir.
Relates to that. But by the same token, and it has to be hazardous in order to get our funding.
It has to, one of the other wordings is what they call premium pay, but it all revolves around the work that was done during the pandemic. If you're wanting to use ARP funds, yes, sir.
Well, I know in Callaway, we've given out appreciation bonuses, if you will, for Hurricane Michael, and also for what they've been going through now. Of course, we have a normal Christmas bonus program, but we have done things other than the Christmas bonus. But no, Bill and I looked, I'm on the same page that we have a lot of people that were, if we want to call COVID a hazardous situation, we have a lot of people that could come up with that same situation. Bay County Sheriff's Department, who we contract with, any of these things. So I've got a problem with it. And if it was for everybody, in the organization, you could almost call it appreciation bonus. But under those conditions, you can't use ARP funding.
So I think the first question to ask is, do we want to get something in before Christmas, or do we want to deal with the ARC funding?
Well, the way this has nothing to do with Christmas.
I know this,
If we want to do something with Christmas, then that'd be a separate thing you can start.
Well, yeah, the reason we're bringing this to you today as an add-on is simply so that we can try and get this done by the Christmas time. This is not something that this is not a Christmas bonus. This is simply what it is it's a pandemic, an incentive for those that work during the pandemic. And we were just trying to make it coincide with the Christmas holiday so that they could use the money to buy presents or whatever they chose to do with it. If you could certainly say to us today, look, we don't want to use ARP funds. We want to use unrestricted funds, and we're willing to do it at, whatever amount you come up with per person. You can say to me, and if it's unrestricted, it's unrestricted. So you could say to me, we only want to do it with the 42 people here, or you can say to me, I want to do it, make it for all the 54 employees that are actually working over there. And in that case, then, every employee would benefit from that, both full-time and part-time. So,
yeah.
But that is, again, if we're using unrestricted funds.
I think using unrestricted funds with this terminology opens up a can that I don't think many people want to open.
So how long have these negotiations been going on? Sound like y'all been talking to union and all that, but we're just finding about this today.
Yeah. Well, one of the things that's kind of held us up is knowing exactly what we could use these ARP funds for. And specifically, when it talks about frontline workers, your immediate thought in my mind is going to be your law enforcement, your EMS, your fire departments, that type of thing. Well, as it's continued and this thing has developed, essential workers specifically has come to also incorporate transportation workers. It's just been probably within the last couple of months that we've been able to kind of have a better understanding where FTA has actually give us, for lack of a better word, a fact sheet on this type of thing. And you got to understand too, while we're getting ARP funds from the federal government, we're governed by the Federal Transit Administration. So, whereas I know Bay County got ARP funds, but their funds came, if I'm not mistaken, came directly from the state. Ours was coming from the federal government, and then they have to put their own guidelines on it. And then we have some things we have to do to ensure that they're comfortable with, the expenditure and that type of thing as well. So it's for us, it's fairly new. I mean, it's been within the last month.
The 900,000+ that you're getting, is it a guaranteed that's for transit, that you have that entire pot of money?
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just a matter of how you spend it?
Yes.
And what type of time frame do you have to spend it?
We have to have it spent by, I think it's September, what is it? 2024. What is it?
2024.
I think it's 2020, September 1st, 2024, if I'm not mistaken. Is what it calls for.
And you have earmarks for where you're going to spend the rest of this, or you're going to see this every year until we spend it on bonuses? Or?
No, this is a one-time bonus. This is one time. The money, the additional money will be spent for what it's intended for, and that's to go out for personal protective equipment, to provide for operations and that type of thing.
Well, you just said what it's intended for, so this is not what it's intended for.
This is what it's intended for, but they give you a wide category for the use of this money for ARC funds. And specifically, they call out operations, personnel, that type of thing. And then the Treasury has actually gone into it a little bit deeper and gave a little bit more clarity. But yes, sir, this is an acceptable expense for the ARC funds.
So what are you waiting on that you intend to get approval for next week?
the federal government is, we have to basically put a budget together and that type of thing. And we've done that. We've submitted it to the federal government, our FTA, if you will. And we're just waiting for them to give us final approval to spend the funds.
All the funds are just this.
Just that. That's just what we've got in ARC funds. We have, several $1 million in CARES Act funds that, we've already worked through. That was, that we got back in 2020.
Now, the other thing we're dealing with, Bill, you can add to this, but the state is actually giving out funds to police. As I was reading recently, more toward the education side and all that. And they've done that as appreciation for what those groups have gone through. So to me, that has already been out there. I mean, they're giving it to law enforcement, they're giving it to, they're not giving it to transit workers. But what I was just referring to in the sheriff's department, I believe bonuses going toward the sheriff's department from the state, and appreciation for their situations during the pandemic. So that's basically what you're asking for here is, well, the state haven't given it out, but you're asking for appreciation for that, and actually it can be funded by ARC money if we handle it the same way that the state is handling it. So on that basis, would not this be the same? And the precedent has already been set by the state. It just hasn't been set by individual local entities or counties. So if we think of it in that terms, that the precedent's already been set, maybe the amount may be a situation, because we're looking, I think in one grant from the state, it was 1,000. I think they've come back with another one for another 1,000. I'm not sure of the numbers, but would that be a way to look at this? Precedent's already been set. Not by us locally, but the firefighters and the sheriff's department, or I don't know about the individual police departments we do with the sheriff's department, but whether or not they've gotten bonuses from the state or recognition from the state for those things. So if I can get my mind going in that direction, that precedent's already been set, I can go along with this, just as long as we're not maybe setting a different financial precedent. So open for discussion.
And I know one of the sticking points seems to be, well, we wanted to do something with Christmas. Well, is it a big disaster? I know if I was going to get $1,500 less taxes, I don't care if I get it December 15th or January 15th. I'm just going to be grateful for the money.
Sure. And
I mean, is that a big sticking point that got to do something before Christmas?
we've been very conscientious about not discussing this with the employees. So it's only been at management staff level. And then, of course, we've had to have those discussions with the union. But Brad can speak for his employees, but I think they would be more than happy to get it, regardless of whether it comes for Christmas or not.
Well, and you can probably use it to pay off your debt from Christmas.
Pay the credit card off.
January.
I did want to mention that the deadline for the funds is February the 28th of 2023. It's the deadline to use the funds by that time.
But I mean, based on what Commissioner Griggs has presented, and I know, some of you are like, I'd rather use the ARP funds. Well, what if we say use the ARP funds, and whenever they're available, then we do it,
Yeah, that's
with the same criteria. So, I mean, what are people's thoughts on that? Or you just want to forget the whole thing and not do anything?
no, I've seen these people, I've seen what they've gone through. Let me tell you, my heart's with them because they were here during the hurricane. The large majority of these people were here and helped this county during the hurricane. So, and I'm not trying to take away, I was a cop for 21 years, so I'm certainly not trying to take away what the other first responders and other essential workers did in this community, because, I was at the EOC watching them. But I know, what these drivers did, and there was thousands of people that were moved to shelters because their houses weren't there anymore. We delivered food. We've done a multitude of things. And during the pandemic, we've got people to vaccination sites, taking food to shut-ins that couldn't get out. But we did that to help the COA because they didn't have the funding to continue that process. So, and we continue to do it to this day. Just recently, we've helped veterans. We've been started picking them up that are shut-ins, getting them to the VA clinic so that they can get vaccinated now that this pandemic, this booster is about. We're fixing to ramp up again. These guys have done a lot. And so I'm all about whatever I can do as the administrator. I want to do what I can to help facilitate it. But ultimately, we're here to do what the board wants us to do. But my heart is with these folks, and
Well, and they didn't get much recognition for what they were doing.
no, ma'am.
There were other groups, first responders and things that they did get, at least got a lot of recognition where transit workers didn't get any.
Just to kind of put it in perspective for you, I got a phone call about 9 o'clock one night from the sheriff's office. This was during the hurricane. And they wanted to know if we could, they didn't tell me why now initially. They wanted to know if we could provide a bus up there to carry firemen to a fire station. And I said, you waiting until now to call me and tell me that? I mean, our resources were very limited at that time. And the guy says, hey, I'm just telling you, we need it. I said, all right, we'll send it up there. So we did. We sent it up there. It turned out we had a fireman of our own that was killed, as a result. So we were able to provide that service. But, the people that benefited from that, that they don't, obviously they had their mind on that fireman that had been killed, but they didn't know that those people were, willing to do it and rearrange all the schedules. Some of them had been working for several days with very little to no sleep, had lost their house. So, I know that's not really what we're here to talk about today, but they did, you're right, they didn't get a whole lot of recognition. And, the guy I've talked about, Doug Sheffer, when I pull up at 4 o'clock in the morning out here, he'd be sitting on the red iron from the gas station that had crumpled out there. And I'd roll my window down. I said, Doug, what in the world are you doing here this early? He said, man, when the bell rings, I'm going to be here. And ultimately COVID took his life. But yeah, I want to help these people as much as I can.
Where did you come up with the 1,500?
It's just consistent with what we've seen other transit agencies do across the board. And so we've seen it go from anywhere from 1,500 to 5,000.
So it is on the low end of.
Yeah, the criteria is it can't be more than $13 an hour or $25,000 in totality, in addition to their existing funds. So, and I think this equates to about 72 cents an hour increase. So it is on the low end in terms of.
Mr. Hobbs, I believe it's your job to be the caretaker of the transit department and to make decisions, in your opinion, that are going to best support your employees. As such, I'm going to place a motion to accept this with ARC only. And lay it on the floor for a second.
I'll second that.
Okay, so we have a
Reasons
motion
I've
and a
given.
second to do this, and whatever the timing, whenever the funds are available, it's done.
Yes, ma'am.
So is there any discussion, any further discussion before we vote? Okay, then, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Aye.
Okay, so the motion carried.
All right, this takes us to the transit update. I don't know if you have anything, Mr. Holmes?
I'm getting out.
I don't remember anything from the previous meeting.
The only thing I just wanted to comment on was, let me say this. Thank you for that support. And thank you for Commissioner Dozier and all the other members here that recognize that these people do their butt off to try and make this a better community for us. But the only other update I want to give you is that we've talked about the renaming of the transit system here in Bay County. That is moving forward. I think a large majority of you, I think, has probably already been contacted by the marketing firm to ask for your input on that process. And we are scheduled to have a meeting within the week to address what the community as a whole has kind of offered up in terms of a name or thing. So we are hoping to have a final decision and have everything ready for you to review and approve by February at our February meeting. But that's kind of where we're at right now with it. So so far it's been a very successful marketing campaign, and we're kind of excited to see what happens with it.
Thank you.
Thank you.
The transit information package is part of your agenda package. There's no presentation for that. We have a legal update.
Nothing to add.
All right, that takes us to other business. Madam Chair, I have a few things to mention before you adjourn. First is each of you should have one of these Bay TPO long-range plan updates. This is the kind of the final to the long-range plan. It's got a 1.5 year process. And you want to hang on to this because it has a good map of the region and the projects that are in the needs, and also in a cost-feasible plan. We have some extras if you need another copy or so. We'd be glad to give it to you. I just want to mention, I haven't forgot you, Ray. But we do have some cookies left in the back if anybody would like one for you. And our public involvement coordinator, Ray, is going to talk to us about our transition to GoToWebinar.
Thanks, Mary Beth. Hi, everyone, Madam Chair and committee board members. I'm sorry. Yes, I'm going to talk to you today. We're going to transition into GoToWebinar. And so, as you know, we started picking up with GoToMeeting as our virtual meeting software about a year ago, over a year ago now. And it has certainly fulfilled the needs that we had at that time. But looking forward, we see room for advancement and improvement. And so we're going to switch over to a software called GoToWebinar. Some of you may be familiar. It's still housed under that same umbrella. And this change will primarily allow more opportunities to increase public participation, as well streamlining those internal processes. So we're going to start slow. Any meeting that is currently live streamed on YouTube and consequently housed later on YouTube will now be shifted, broadcasted live on GoToWebinar, and then archived on what is called the GoTo stage page. All of these will be married together, and then they're going to live in a one-click system on our website. So the system, as I said, is streamlined, it's refined, and it's designed for a really great user experience. And that experience will include things like live polling with live results, smoother streaming for all participants, and again, that archive of public meetings so that people can go back and watch at a leisurely pace when they need to. The last is enhancements in audio and visual controls that will encourage virtual participation because that system will be smoother. So moving to this software doesn't necessarily mean a big change like you may think, or maybe one more program to learn. It's quite the contrary. Our team is working very hard and has been test driving this program for a while now. We're going to continue to learn all of these ways that we can enhance the experience. So the next question you probably have is, when will this happen? And like most new things, we're going to do it in the new year. We're going to start specifically with that first set of TPO meetings in 2022. And when we do that, we'll update all of that general public noticing language with specific instructions so that this process is clear and concise. Those instructions will also be available to all of you should you need it in the event of an illness, travel, or an emergency. So all of those same rules are going to apply as we move into the webinar platform, but it's just going to make our presence more easy to access and hopefully open more doors to that public involvement. So I'm available to answer any questions you may have now in the future as we go through this process. And I thank you for giving me a minute to explain it to you.
Questions? We're good, thank you.
Thank you all.
Anything else?
But I'll just say this, we have not put together our schedule for 2022. We have some draft months that we think we will be meeting in, and we will start in February. We will meet in April, June, August, and October. And we will hopefully have that schedule ready by the end of this year. But we will meet here.
That's all. Did anybody have anything they wanted to bring up before we adjourn?
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Yeah.
I was gonna say Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. So everybody have great holidays and we'll see you next year. So I have a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Okay, thank y'all. We are adjourned.
All right.
Not usually here.